What's the most messed up thing someone has confessed to you in confidence? Story 1. Some guys once told me the most messed up thing, as if it was no big deal. I grew up in the military. When I was in high school, we moved across the country to a house that was in a development not far from the base. I made new friends as kids do, and one day I was running around the neighborhood with a few other teens. This was long before the internet. A few of the guys decide they're going to go to this other guy's house and hang out. They ask if I want to come, and the conversation goes like this. Hey, you want a blowy? What? I ask, not sure if I heard him right the first time. A blowy. Gary's sister is cute, and she'll give blowies to anybody. And if she likes you, she'll let you bang her too. Sure. I said. The 15-year-old me is really starting to like it here. We get to Gary's house and knock on the door. Gary answers and invites us in. The other guys mention that I want a blowy, teasing and giving me a hard time like teen boys do. We walk into the living room, and there's Gary's dad on the couch, half bare, and this girl is giving him a blowy. Gary tells me she'll take care of me when she's done and gives me this smile like. It still creeps me the F out thinking about it, now almost 30 years later. I later found out that this girl was younger than all of us. All previous excitement drains out of me as I watch what's unfolding. The grown-up on the couch smiles and greets us, the other boys all watching with this. Look, that stuck with me. It took me maybe a minute to make an excuse and get out of there. I went home and just kind of sat there in shock for a while. Eventually, a couple of the guys knocked on my door, saying they just wanted to hang out. They asked me if I was okay and basically wanted to make sure I wasn't a snitch. My dad and stepmom came home from work later, both military, and at dinner they could tell something was off. I mean, seriously, that was the worst frigging thing I've ever seen in my life. It doesn't take long for me to spill the entire thing to my dad. He called the cops, and I ended up having to talk to the police several times. Gary and his dad got arrested along with 2 other neighborhood kids and a grown-up guy I had never met. I don't know what happened to the girl, though. I never saw her again. We lived there for 1 school year before moving several miles away to another school district. That year was hell for me. The other kids gave me a hard time and got the crap beat out of me a couple times for being a rat. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. An old acquaintance of mine is the father of all of his sister's children. Her husband doesn't know. Several years ago, a guy I knew in high school came back stateside from deployment in Iraq. He had been shot multiple times while saving his convoy, which had been stopped because of an IED attack. He had been awarded a Purple Heart and was nominated for a Silver Star. I never found out if he won the star. Anyway, he had recovered and was back stateside for good, so his family threw this huge party. He was regarded as a local hero, so hundreds of people showed up, people I haven't seen in years. I had been shot right out of high school, civilian injury, so we bonded over that immediately. As the night went on, we consumed more and more alcohol, and he started introducing me as his best friend. Whatever, let him have his night, right? We ended up smoking in a stairwell, completely drunk. He told me in confidence that all of his sister's kids were his. He told me that they had been banging since they were young and that she had been having trouble conceiving with her husband. He came back from deployment on leave 3 times, so she had 3 kids. They look nothing like her husband. I guess he just thought that she has strong genes or something. Anyway, just about 9 months after the party, she and her husband had their 4th kid. It looks just like the other 3. Story 3. I had a bar friend going on 5 years back. You know, one of those friends you only hang out with when both of you are conveniently drinking at the same time. Anyway, I knew she had a crush on me. She wasn't too bad looking. She was one of those girls that peaked in high school and very quickly eroded due to alcohol and minor drug abuse. This was during a time when I didn't really have standards when it came to physical relations. So, that night after a few drinks, I decided to turn on the flirt. We get to talking, and she begins to express to me how willing she is to do whatever I want. Now obviously I had to test this, so I asked if she ever offered this to another guy. Yes, she did. She begins to unload just awful things. The highlight for me was a gentleman who asked her to give a blowy to her dog, which she did. She admitted that she kind of liked it and ended up doing it with her dog a few times after. Suffice to say, I did not bang. Story 4. This just happened at work the other night. We have a couple of new guys that my lead man and I are going to be training to sandblast on separate shifts until they get their bearings and can go on their own on the 3rd shift we are opening. Now first I'll tell you, sandblasters work in two-man crews, in a separate building from the rest of the shops. Anyway, this kid I'm training started with us about 2 months ago, but then after a couple weeks, disappeared for almost 3 full weeks without any explanation. Rumor had it that he'd been in an accident and was just out on short-term medical. I believe this because he drives like a frigging moron and would have been happy believing that forever. He's not all that bright and pretty much sucks at everything he does, except it's turning out that he's pretty good at sandblasting from what we've seen so far. So there's hope, but we'll get back to that. So I got curious on Wednesday night and asked what had happened, and he straight up told me, calm as can be, that his ex-girlfriend was supposed to come see him that weekend he disappeared so they could reconcile, but her new boyfriend called him and said she didn't want to see him or talk to him anymore. Naturally, he was upset, as one might be, but instead of dealing with this, he proceeds to load a rifle, get in his car, and start driving a state away to go off both of them. He was talking to his mom about it while it was all going down, and she called the police, and they intercepted him about 100 miles into his trip and threw him in a mental hospital for 19 days. He just told me that like he was telling me about what he ate for lunch or something, all while explaining that he still has guns at home that no one knows about. Then tonight, he leaves work early because he needs to talk to his doctor about the meds he's on because he's having bad thoughts. And they're going to leave me alone with this whack job for 2 weeks, overnight, operating very dangerous equipment. Sweet. Story 5. Someone I consider to be a brother had his first girlfriend when we were about 23, and it ended horribly. He was 6'8", had the body of a Spartan, and had a bit of an anger issue. Being 5'7", he scared the crap out of me whenever he went on a fit. One night he came back to our dorm room and told me the girlfriend was supposed to be house-sitting but wouldn't respond to any of his texts. I blew it off and said, well, it's late, she's probably passed out. He settled down and we went to sleep. A couple hours later, I woke up to a phone call from him saying he's standing outside the house looking at her with another man through the window. He and I both started crying as he told me he has to off them both and don't let the media turn him into a monster. I've never begged so hard in my life. I honestly don't remember now what I was saying, but I remember throwing out any and every plea I could think of. He hung up, and I experienced what I guess was my first panic attack. I kept calling and calling. Finally, he picked up again and said he had just bought a knife and was on his way back to the house. I decided to appeal to his sense of brotherhood by saying if we really are good friends, I get to see him one more time before it's over. We sat in a parking lot near the dorms while we talked it out. Eventually he decided to let it go and went to sleep back at the room. I vomited for an hour straight after. Hands down the worst thing I've ever dealt with and been told. I went with him the next day and stood at a distance while he broke it off. About a year later, he suddenly passed away from heart issues ironically. Never did love again. Story 6. A coworker, we'll call her Anne, told me a story about her softball coach when she was in high school. Her dad was abusive, and her mom took her and ran when she was young, so her father was not in the picture. Her softball coach had become a kind of father figure to her, and she spent a lot of time with him. One of the girls on the team disappeared, and her parents assumed she had run away with her boyfriend since she was a troubled girl, and the boyfriend was bad news. One day, Anne rode to practice with her coach, and when they were finished with practice, she grabbed his keys and was going to put her bag in his trunk because she was embarrassed about smelly clothes in her bag. When she opened his trunk, she found her teammate, bare in his trunk. She didn't say anything and quit softball and took up drugs and fighting a lot. The coach eventually got caught and went to jail. She was mostly off drugs by the time I met her, but she was definitely not functional. She was still drinking and fighting a lot. It was sad. Story 7. A childhood friend of mine got pregnant around the same time I did. While we were both deep into our pregnancies, she confided in me that her boyfriend wasn't the father. She was white, he was black, and she was convinced he'd figure it out as soon as their baby was born. But when the baby arrived, her skin tone was dark enough to raise questions, yet she still chose not to say anything. Fast forward a year. She finally came clean, and as expected, he left. Shortly after, she got together with another guy she had been involved with around the same time and told him he was the father. He was Hispanic. A few years went by, and she had another baby, this time presumably his. They ended up getting married. The thing is, her 2 daughters look nothing alike. The older one has very ethnic features and tightly textured hair, while the younger one doesn't at all. Eventually, she admitted to me that she knew the first guy absolutely wasn't the father, but she had been sleeping with so many men during that period that she genuinely had no idea who was. Her husband still has no clue. We're not close anymore, so I'm not sure how everything has played out, but based on what she posts on Facebook, let's just say the picture she paints online is very different from the truth she once shared with me. Story 8. Years back, when I was around 18 to 19, my girlfriend at the time came over one night when my parents were out of town. Things took a turn for the worse, and a big argument ensued. She flipped out beyond belief, and decided she was going to walk home. And so she went. About 30 minutes later, I got a call on my cell phone from a weird number. So I answer. She's on the other line crying hysterically to come up the road and pick her up. When I get there and find her, she gets in my car visibly shaken and crying like crazy. After a few minutes of gently pleading with her to tell me what happened, she proceeded to tell me that as she was walking along the street, some young, big, black dude had pulled her off of the sidewalk to the side and proceeded to SA her. I begged her for an hour to let me call the police or take her to the hospital, all the while wanting to go cruise the area to look for the guy. She cried more hysterically as I dug deeper, and just begged to let her take a shower and sleep in my bed. As a young guy, I really had no idea how exactly to handle the situation, so I just did whatever she asked to help and to make her as comfortable as possible. Physically gave her space, not trying to have any sort of physical contact for quite some time. Needless to say, the entire argument we had was water under the traumatic bridge. The relationship eventually soured after a year, and we inevitably went our separate ways. 5 years later, I became really close with one of her good female friends. One night while drinking pretty heavily, the friend finally revealed to me that the entire SA thing had never really happened. She just lied to me about it to get the entire argument out of my mind, and in turn to make me incredibly sympathetic to her. Been pretty hard to trust women since then. Even now, being with the same girl for 12 years, having 2 children together and sharing a home, I still find it hard to fully let my guard down and trust her completely. Story 9. I have a friend who is a serious drug addict and a cash-only companion. I'm actually really hoping she is still alive now. I haven't heard from her in over a month. She's been in a real bad spot for at least a few years now. Every time we chill, she drops some sort of huge bomb about herself. Sometimes a few. I don't even know where to start. Back when we first started chilling, we would just burn, listen to music, talk about stupid things, and fool around. She wasn't an S-worker at this point, just really liked to sleep around. I honestly don't think there is anything wrong with that, as long as you aren't lying to anyone. She didn't lie to me about it, but probably because I was so chill about that kind of stuff. She lied to most of the other guys, and told them they were the only one. She even liked to lead guys on with whom she was never going to sleep with, so they would buy her crap. She showed me a day planner she had where she kept track of all the guys she slept with Mallrats style. There were smiley faces to note when she had the big O, and little notations for if she gave them a blowy or received one. She eventually told me that she stopped keeping the records because the book got so big it started to scare her. She got really heavy into drugs, and I stopped chilling with her as much because I had a bit of a drug problem in the past, and I wasn't trying to end up a junkie again. Still clean, if any of you care about that. Over 7 years now. Her parents got tired of her behavior and ended up kicking her out. That's when she started hooking. This is where the crap she started telling me gets a lot more intense. She advertised on Backpage, as well as working with a service. Never wanted a pimp. I can't really blame her there, but there are dangers associated with not having one too. Honestly, given the choice between essentially becoming a slave and taking my life into my own hands, every time I went to work, I had no idea what I would do. She chose the latter. I would get phone calls from her after she was with a client who treated her poorly. Once, I got a call from her crying after she was abandoned at a casino where a group of guys hit her and abandoned her after they had all used her services. The guy she was living with would withhold her drugs occasionally in order to get her to bang him. She once told me she'd be fine with a regiment if he would just establish one and stick to it, like a blowy a week and banging twice a month or something. But he wouldn't do that. He would wait until she needed something and use it against her in order to get her to bang him. Eventually, she told me that her father and uncle used to SA her when she was a child. She told me about her father being abusive in other ways too. Said her mother told her once that her father wasn't her biological father, that she had cheated on him, and that's why he liked her less than her older sister, who ostensibly was actually his biological daughter. Honestly, I chilled at her parents' house before they kicked her out. Her mother is straight off the Jersey Shore, and her father is an electrical engineer who somehow managed to never learn to read. If all of what she said is true, I honestly can understand why she tried so hard to escape with drugs and random relations. Not that that was the right choice, but I don't blame her for making some bad choices. A while back, after her parents had kicked her out and she had moved in with the scummy guy I mentioned earlier, she told me about how she had 3 new boyfriends. Specifically, told me that none of them knew she was a junkie or an S-worker and that none of them knew about each other. She also told me that she didn't use protection with any of them. About an hour later, she propositioned me. I can't blame her for trying because we used to bang back in the day, but I really wasn't into it after what she told me, so I told her I wasn't feeling well and didn't want to get her sick. A few months ago, she was in a particularly bad situation, so I told her to come and stay with me for a week. I basically took care of her like she was my child for that week. She called me a couple of days later to thank me for everything. She also thanked me for not essaying her. She didn't say it like that. What she said was, "I like how you make me feel like I'm really your friend. Like you didn't force me once while I was with you." That hit me hard. She knows me. She knows I would never do something like that. But this is the world she lives in now. Or maybe doesn't. Like I said, I haven't heard from her in a little over a month now. Really hoping she wasn't offed, or that she didn't OD or something. She's so used to people screwing her over she doesn't know who she can trust anymore. Update: I located her in a rehab facility. She's alive. I'm sure she would be thrilled to know some people out there care, like you all seem to. Story 10. One night, after a few too many beers, my birth father admitted he wasn't sure I was actually his. He said it didn't matter, he loved me anyway. But honestly, I'm pretty sure I am. We look so much alike. Edit for context. I was adopted as a baby by another couple. When I turned 18, I reached out and reconnected with my birth family. My biological mom had been a very young mother, already raising 2 kids, and she struggled with drug addiction. My birth father, the one in this story, was also deep into hard drugs and alcohol. They were both just young and lost, growing up in a rough small town in the 80s, without much guidance or support. When I first made contact, my birth mother told me my dad didn't want anything to do with me. At the time, I just accepted it and didn't think much of it. Then, out of the blue, a girl sent me a friend request on Facebook. She turned out to be my younger sister, my dad's daughter. That's when I realized nothing my birth mom had said was true. After that, my dad and I started talking regularly on the phone. We built a real relationship, and eventually, he and my sister came out to Arizona to visit me. One night, after a few too many beers, my birth father opened up to me. He said he hadn't really understood the adoption process back then. He was young, overwhelmed, and honestly thought he didn't have a choice. Part of him believed I might not even be his. But then he saw a picture of me. He told me that in that moment, everything changed. He said he was almost certain I was his, and even if I wasn't, it didn't matter, because to him, I was. I was his now. It was actually a really sweet conversation, one of those rare, quiet moments where everything just feels genuine. And for those who keep suggesting we get a DNA test or pointing out that people can look alike without being related, this is different. It's not just eye color or hair or whatever. We have the same face. I'm literally a female version of him, with a touch of my mom mixed in. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. But I don't want a DNA test. I don't need it. Story 11. When I was in 8th grade, my friend confessed to me that her stepdad was essaying her. I told an adult. He was arrested. Edit. I don't want to give too much information, but I'll try to answer everyone's questions. He had started essaying her a few months before she told me, and I had gotten a creepy vibe from the guy. It began with prolonged hugging, tickling, and then it escalated to improper and inappropriate touchings. He was arrested, admitted everything, and pleaded out. My friend stayed with my family for a while. Years later, as adults, she admitted she was initially angry with me, but that she's grateful now. We are still friends on Facebook, and she has a very happy life. She overcame the poverty she was raised in, has a great career, and is in a happy marriage. I also want to make the point that part of the reason I felt comfortable going to someone was the relationship I had with my vice principal. I was part of a club she headed, and her treatment of me, and the way she helped build up my self-image and esteem made me feel both that I could trust her and handle any backlash I received from reporting the abuse. I felt I could talk to her about anything, and she was the person I went to with this. I encourage anyone reading this who is in a position to please take a lesson from this and do the same for other children and teens. You can save a life. Story 12. When my daughter was about 2.5 years, her vocabulary began growing quite a bit, and she started talking to me a lot more. One day we were lying in bed, and she started telling me that her grandpa put his finger in her back door. I immediately felt sick. I still feel sick writing about this. To make things harder is, she is a toddler, and I had a good relationship with my in-laws. She also says stuff like there are talking spiders, and that she's a bird. So, I held it in and decided to keep her very close and pay very close attention. I began noticing other behaviors that make me worry more and more. Her private pearl gets sore a lot, and I noticed something very concerning. I couldn't risk my kid anymore even if this person was innocent. My kid is worth more to me than protecting an innocent person. I don't feel bad saying that either. So, I tell my wife what happened. Instead of getting support, she fights me on it. She defends him and says it's not true. We argue pretty much for a full day. Honestly, to this day, I can't forgive her for this. I really hate her for it. I got fed up and called the Child Protective Services and told them what's going on. We go and do interviews, and they take my daughter and talk to her/examine her and interview her mother and I. Throughout the entire interview between my wife and I and the social worker, they continually try to discredit me/my daughter and say my daughter didn't give them anything actionable. They went and interviewed my in-laws and their kids, and about a month later it was over. I still feel like we've been failed. I feel like I failed my daughter. The worst part is that since it was officially cleared, we have to be associated with them still because in my wife's mind, that means nothing happened. I die inside when I think about this stuff. I don't have any recourse, and any actions I could take now would be useless. I've seriously thought about making him go away, but then I would be leaving my Kisa alone in the world with their mother, who, I feel, doesn't actually care about protecting them, based on how she acted. It's pretty much shaken my relationship with people in general. I don't trust anyone. I don't want anyone near my kids. I don't even like it when they're out of my sight. It's made me paranoid beyond belief. I've even had crazy thoughts like maybe my wife is in cahoots with my in-laws in some sort of crazy pact. I have no way to remedy this. I just have to live with it and hope I can protect them. My daughter and her little sister. Story 13. So, I'm in the same class with these twins. They're originally from Argentina, but they're studying here in Canada. One time someone asked them if they were planning on becoming Canadian citizens after they graduated. Instantly, the girl says no. Here in Canada, romantic relations between siblings is against the law. Her brother just nodded along and added a yup. At the end, they told us that when they first started, their parents knew about it and disapproved, but they couldn't really do anything about it because it's not illegal. And they even kissed to prove they weren't joking. They were completely nonchalant about it too, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Story 14. We aren't sure if it was in confidence. We quizzed everyone else in the workshop, and nobody else had ever been told what he told us. Anyway, one of our supervisors is a complete space cadet. Gotta be on the darker side of 40, looks like he's wired most of the time, and falls asleep during meetings when he's not looking wired most of the time. My tradesman and I'm an apprentice, were working on our fabrication platform and gave Bob, not his real name, just in case, a wave as he heads into his office. He waves back, grinning his tripped-out maniac grin, and shouts he will be back in a second for a chat. Sure enough, he comes back and proceeds to tell us, with no prompting of any sort, about how he loves to do the whale to a woman when he's banging her back door. I don't want to be graphic while explaining what it means, so you can search it up. Apparently, it's awesome, and the guy getting a blowy at the same time thinks it's also awesome. He also told us he wants to bang Judge Judy. Story 15. My SO got drunk and told me all about her plans to shag some other guy to get back at me for nothing. Seriously, just to do it. After all the crap I've done for her, it pissed me off beyond being able to react. I just stopped feeling. No pain or anger now. Just calmness. I suppose I can confide in Reddit, so you can have something to respond to on this thread. I'm still with her, I still feel nothing all the time, and I haven't told her about it and don't plan to. Edit. The thing is, I am just too uncaring to even try to break it off at the moment, as it will be distance anyway. I never tried thinking about it much, and will soon. We have been together for 3 years, which I assume is why I may just deep down still really love her, but I can't feel that up top for the time being. I should and will break it off, yes. I'll force myself to do so. I've put an incredible amount of work into this relationship and got caught off guard. I am just procrastinating because I am probably just in shock still and feel like doing nothing at the moment. Once you are in a relationship, these long things get more complicated than just breaking it off at a moment's notice, no matter how much you should. I feel nothing, but I can still wrap my mind around what the proper choices should be. There is a great deal of information which you do not know, which has an impact on everything. Story 16. My grandfather was a drunk Irishman with quite a temper and a fondness for drugs. He spent half his life in prison and was a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. But with age he got too old and sick to act the way he used to. So my grandmother, his ex-wife, let him sleep on the couch for a while until he was hospitalized. This was a man that also shared a cell with Charles Manson, so he claims. He spent most of his time in jail for drug smuggling and robbing a bank. I am almost certain that he essayed my mother and her 2 sisters. On his deathbed, he confessed to several murders that he got away with in an attempt to repent. When I asked him if he would do it again, he said that he would. This was many years ago, and I forgot the majority of the details. I wish I had recorded his confessions and given them to the police to perhaps bring some peace of mind to the victims' families. But he never gave me any names or locations, just the acts themselves. The only one I remember is him telling me that one night he got blackout drunk at a bar, staggered out to his car, grabbed a crowbar, and hit a random person until he passed in an alley. I am an atheist, but I secretly wish there is a hell specifically for this man. His last words to me were, "Well, F you then," when I refused to sneak into his hospital room with a pack of cigarettes while he was on a ventilator. Good riddance. Story 17. When I first started dating my ex-girlfriend, she was super weird about physical intimacy. She loved giving me HJs and BJs, but mentioning more than those made her squirm in a bad way. She would never take her pants off, and I couldn't touch her below the waist for the longest time. She grew up in a super Bible thumper environment, but she was awesome, so it didn't really bother me at first. After a couple of months, I noticed that she was almost always the one to initiate messing around. So, I decided to just ask her about it flat out. Apparently, she had been essayed her entire senior year of high school by her stepdad. Mind you, she was finishing her freshman year in college at the time, so it was quite recent. I asked her if she had ever told her dad or her mom about it. Apparently, she never wanted to tell her dad because she knew he would literally off the guy. Her dad was a SWAT officer in a bad part of Pittsburgh, and she didn't want to tell her mom because he made her happy. I understood why she didn't want to tell her dad, kind of. But when she told me about her mom, I flipped crap. I told her it was completely messed up to avoid telling her mom about it, just because she thought she was happy with the guy. He was a sick jerk and needed to be dealt with. I promised not to tell her parents about it, but it was a lot to take in and deal with. The most difficult part was near the end of our relationship. Her dad loved me, but her mom and stepdad despised me. They thought I was a devil worshiper because I smoked, drank, and didn't believe in God, at least not in the context they do. They constantly would harass me about it, and I always tried to ignore it and keep it a secret from her. I didn't want her to have to deal with any more crap than she was already going through, and as long as she stayed by me, I would put up with it. Then she found out that they were constantly texting and calling me to threaten me and whatnot, and she sided with them. She thought that the only reason I would keep it from her was because I knew they were right about me. It took every ounce of decency in me to not flat out tell her mom that she was married to a guy who essayed her daughter, and out the entire situation. I take promises seriously, and since I promised not to tell her parents, I pretty much had to bite my tongue throughout everything regardless of what they said to me. It hurt me so much to keep it all bottled in and watch her succumb to their frigging brainwashing BS. But a promise is a promise. To this day, 8 years later, I have never recovered from it or had another serious relationship. I am terrified of being put in even a remotely similar situation again. I have also never met another girl who I had the same kind of connection with. Over a year and a half of dating her, and other than the end of the relationship, we never argued. Literally, not a single argument. The closest thing was over what movie to watch or where to eat. We were both the kind of people where it would go. I am feeling Red Robin, but it's whatever. I can eat there anytime. If you want Applebee's, I'm okay with that. Never had any relationship even close, and I still wonder what would have happened if I did tell her parents about her stepdad. Story 18. I went to a preppy boarding school in high school. During that time, I made good friends with a guy who lived across the hall from me who I'll call B. B was a year ahead of me in school, and he was an entertaining, if a bit odd, dude. One of my favorite memories is walking over to his room and having a long philosophical discussion with him while a hardcore Korn video played in the background. Fast forward to the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. I used to talk to B over AIM regularly, and I really felt bad for the guy, because he was having a lot of trouble fitting in at college, and had dropped out and was living back at home. That summer, though, things turned from strange and depressed to erratic. I would get random non-sequitur messages from him in the middle of the night. There were 3 or 4 of us who were good friends with him, and there would be periods where none of us would hear from him. I didn't get a lot of the details until later as to some of the crazy stuff he did while he was missing. So from my view, as someone who only talked to him online from 2,000 miles away, I didn't really know what to make of it. Then there was the last time I talked to him. He messaged me over AIM and told me he had to confess to me. He explained that he had bad and strange thoughts. He said he had memories of adults at our high school attacking him, but he wasn't sure if they were real or if someone had planted them in his head. I remember being really worried and pleaded for him to get help. I didn't know what else to do, and eventually he signed off. The next day, I got a call from one of our mutual friends sobbing. B had gotten into an argument with his dad that morning, took his dad's gun, offed him, and then himself. Luckily his father survived, but B didn't. Hearing that it had happened, just a day after he had told me what things were going through his head, was really tough as an 18-year-old. It was easily one of the worst days of my life. I wish that we could have helped you, B. Maybe if I had been a bit older then, I would have had a better idea of how to save you from yourself. I also regret not making it to your funeral. I just want you to know that I think about you often. Bud. Story 19. While probably not as messed up as some things here, I got friendly with one of my bosses back when I worked a crappy printing job. He was a cool guy, as Guido as all hell on the outside, but once you started talking to him, you realized that he was just a guy. He opened up to me for some reason. Probably because he and I were the only people at that place that weren't dumb as a sack of crap. I'd do my work, and he'd just hang around in 15-20-minute shots and shoot the crap before he had to do his rounds of the workplace and make sure nobody was on fire or whatever. Yeah, screen printing t-shirts. Those machines catch on fire. Who knew? But he seemed depressed one day. I asked him what was on his mind, and he told me. Turns out, he hated his life. Not just work, though. He's faithfully married and would never cheat, but if he could go back, he'd have never gotten married. He loves his kids, but he hates being a dad. He's in it, and he's not looking to run away from where he is, but he told me that if he could, he'd take it all back. That even though he's happy when he's with his family at home, the second he leaves the house he just thinks about the freedoms he surrendered, and that he didn't think he made the right choice. It's probably a pretty common thing, but I've never had someone admit things like that in person. I wished I could have said something to make him feel better or comfort him, but I was only 22 at the time. I had no idea what he was going through and knew I never would. I don't want to get married or have kids. Story 20. I have worked with some messed up people. And yes, the temps are from construction jobs. One guy told me that when he was little, he walked in on his babysitter and her brother doing it. The brother, same age, came out and told him she wanted him to come in too and bang her. For years after that, they tag-teamed the sister. When she got a serious boyfriend, she stopped and told them she would off them if they told him. When she and her boyfriend broke up, they went back to doing it. She got married when he was 18. That ended it. The brother ended up with mental problems. And eventually told the shrink that it all started when he began banging his sister. Yeah, I am sure that turned out well. A guy was working with us and was always checking his phone. Some days he would leave early, which was fine. He was a temp. So, he is on his phone one day, and I ask him why the hell is he always on that damn phone and put it down and do some work. He then tells us that his wife works at a job that calls her in all the time. His cousin down the road keeps an eye out, and when his wife leaves, she tells him to come over and bang, and starts sending him pictures of herself working a fake dong. This has been going on for years. He gets off early if his wife is going to be home earlier than usual, so he can bang her. He said they had been banging since they were young, and that they are in love. His wife texted him all the time too. Cousin was sort of hot, and her favorite fake dong was purple. A guy at a party in high school told us how he would listen through the wall in his closet as his dad and stepmom banged, and he'd solo off. He even tried to poke a hole through the sheetrock and watch. Needed a long enough nail, and he was going to paint the tip the wall color, so he could take it out and watch. Said she would walk around the house bare after her shower, and he soloed off to that too. A girl I worked with told me she was essayed by a neighbor and brought other kids over to be essayed. A guy told us when his teenage daughter moved in with him. He was out partying and met a dude, and he crashed at his house. He woke up in the middle of the night to find his daughter giving a blowy to the dude and had a moral dilemma about whether he should beat his A off or let them bang because he was after all his buddy and gave him a ride and got him high. He did not interfere. A random dude at a place I worked, came in a few times, and we ended up taking him out back one night to burn with him. He showed us a self-offing note from his ex-girlfriend he kept in his wallet. Said he came back to her trailer to get some crap, and she had done the drink and was gone in the tub. He took the note off the table and kept it, then called the cops. The places where the ink was blurry was from her tears. When he finished and put it back, he said bish and laughed. A temp was telling us when he realized he loved the girl, who is his wife, was when he confronted a bunch of illegals that had hurt her and ended up drawing a gun. When we asked what happened, he said they ran and never came around her again, but one of them disappeared. When we jokingly said he was probably buried in a shallow grave, dude got real weird for a few days. Story 21. I am a magnet for crazy, seriously. I always have been. My mother is bipolar, and it has only continued from there. Just last week I had a girl, who quickly lost the ability to speak in English, assault me. But with that draw of crazy, I also have people confess stuff to me rather often. I have talked to 2 strangers out of offing themselves. Most recently a Vietnam vet that was separated from his wife and children, had been laid off. I kept talking to him for some time after I met him randomly at a gas station. He had some interesting stories. One girl I was dating confessed on the first date that she sometimes gave HJ to her dog. I worked with this girl, quickly learned not to dip the pen in company ink, but I was 20 at the time. She ended up dating my boss, and eventually got fired for that. I left that job a few years later, but my boss was moving in with her at that point. He did own a dog. Another friend told me a story about how she had a 3 score with 2 30-year-old brothers when she was 15. A girl I used to work with told me, while closing, that her father and her father's best friend used to essay her, at the same time. A girl I knew admitted that she always tried to sleep with Mormon missionaries because it screwed with their religion, and she had issues with their stance on homosexuality. She is bisexual and very hot. From her admission, she was not too uncommonly successful. A friend of my mother's came over distraught one night and started talking about how her friend had offed someone right in front of her. She is still currently in jail. It has been about 20 years now. For being an accessory to offing someone and helping conceal it, she got a larger sentence as she was a registered RN and should have known better. I had a stepfather tell me about his time in the KKK. I'm half black. While I have several examples, this is the one I think will stand out in my mind the longest, because it is kind of sad. 2 months ago, I had a woman break into my garage and tried to off herself. She ran away down the street bleeding when discovered, which I am sure looked great to the neighborhood. First a bleeding disheveled girl goes running from my house, and then several police cars show up. The dispatcher had me watch which way she was going. The police did catch her, and she survived. She came back 2 weeks later, apologized and asked if I had a flash drive she lost. It was the most important thing to her, and that she has been homeless for some time since her last roommate started hooking up with a drug dealer. She lost her place, forced out by the new boyfriend, then her job, and just fell into horrible despair. She broke into my garage the night before to get out of the rain, and was sorry for any trouble she had caused. I had found the drive, and looked to see what was on it. It was all pictures of a cat, like years' worth of cat photos. This girl lost everything she had due to a screwed-up roommate, and was desperately clinging to life via old cat photos. Yeah, this is like a thread made for me. Story 22. This one's a bit strange. A few friends and I were grabbing a quick beer at a bar after uni. Not even late, like 4 in the afternoon. Just stopping by because someone was celebrating a birthday. We were hanging out on the top floor when a drunk girl wandered over. She looked around for a bit, stared at us, then came right up and started chatting casually. Out of nowhere, she said, "My boyfriend's downstairs." I got really drunk and I'm sorry, but I need you guys to help me get away from him. He's abusive. I left him, and if he tries to fight you, you could probably take him. We were worried about the girl. She looked no older than 18 and was really tiny, so we agreed to help. After finishing our drinks and paying the bill, we left with her. Outside, she clung to my arm like a drunk koala and was moving really slowly. But then she started getting a bit grabby. The friend I was walking with found it kind of funny, but we didn't want to come off as creeps, so we gently tried to stop her. Now, a couple of blocks later, she sits down on a bench, and we start talking to her. She's really scared to go back to her flat because it's a student's house and she's prohibited from drinking and they'll tell her family. So she starts to flirt, or try to, and tries to get us to take her to one of our places for the night. We talk alone and know it's crazy, even more because it's like 5 p.m. and it's not even dark. We decline a lot of times, but she's really insisting on it. Then in what I guess she thought was a stroke of brilliant flirting, she asks me to come closer, looks at me, and I'll never forget what she says. "You do know my uncle essayed me," and smiles like it's the sexiest thing ever, and I will take her to my place right then. I didn't know what to say. After a few minutes, I took her phone while my friend called one of her contacts. I kept her distracted until a friend of hers, who happened to be nearby, came to pick her up. I haven't seen her since. Story 23. I don't know if this fits, because it's not exactly messed up, like some of the stories in here. It's just very sad. Here goes though. Something about me makes people want to spill their guts to me. I don't know what it is. I'm quiet and keep to myself in public, especially around strangers. Maybe that's why. I have a few troubling stories of things I've been told or seen, but this one has stuck with me. Anyway, it's late at night. This was in Hampton, near Norfolk and Virginia Beach, back when I used to live on the East Coast, and I'm at the bus station, waiting for my bus to come. There's this lady there with her son. She's a little bedraggled, her hair is growing out, her clothing is clean, but ratty, she's underdressed, and the way she carries herself, she just overall looks so sad and defeated. She has her young son with her, but he's in tidy, warm clothing. He's got his backpack on his lap, and he's doing his homework in the orange glare of the streetlights. He is very serious and quiet. The bus isn't coming for like 45 minutes because it's late, and at some point, she starts talking to me. She tells me about how she's on the verge of being homeless and is living in a motel. She has no money for food, and everything in her life is extremely hard right now, since her very recent ex-boyfriend either beat her or tried to off her. I feel awkward that she's spilling this to me, but I understand she probably has literally no one to talk to, and because I grew up very poor myself, I help give her information about resources, thin on the ground in the area we were in because the shelters are full. I guess she's starting to feel comfortable with me, because then she tells me she's thought about going out on the train tracks and doing it, offing herself, that it would fix everything. She's crying, but that desperate, broken sort of crying. Her son doesn't look up from his work this whole time, but there's no way he couldn't have heard this and understood. From there, I immediately swung into working my hardest trying to convince her that she shouldn't off herself, that her son needed her, that there was help out there. I'm doing my damnedest to give this woman some leads to go on, giving her advice on how to get money, what to do with the car she has that doesn't work, where to get social services, everything I can think of, and I gave her some of the food I'd just bought at Big Lots. I tell her about my childhood, a topic I'm hesitant to talk about, try to connect with her. Everything I can think of. I don't even know if I ever got her name, but what she said, even if I didn't know her, kicked up something in me. I didn't want her to die needlessly. Eventually, the bus comes, she gets on with her son, and that's it. I never see her again. I've never told this story before. Honestly, I think about her a lot. I hope she made it. I hope she got help. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.